The Velith Dominion had been conquering worlds for over 2,000 years. They had taken 17 star systems. They had enslaved hundreds of species. Their method was always the same. They would arrive with their massive fleet. They would send a message demanding surrender. And every single time, the primitive species below would kneel and accept their fate. High Commander. Delos stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked at the blue planet on the main screen. Earth. That was what the natives called it. His scouts had been watching this world for several months. They had studied the humans. They had observed their cities, their weapons, their governments. The reports made Delos smile. The humans were divided into nearly 200 separate nations. They fought among themselves constantly. Their weapons were primitive. They had nuclear devices, yes, but nothing that could threaten a Velith warship. They had no space fleet, no planetary shields, no orbital defense platforms. This would be easy. Send the standard message, Delos ordered his communications officer. Give them 12 hours to surrender. The message went out on every frequency. It appeared on every television, every radio, every phone on Earth. The words were translated into every human language. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Velith Dominion. You will surrender all weapons. You will present your leaders for processing. You will accept our rule. Resistance will result in the destruction of your largest cities. You have 12 hours to comply. Then Delos sat back in his chair and waited. He expected panic. He expected chaos. He expected some nations to surrender immediately while others argued. He had seen it many times before. What he did not expect was silence. In Seoul, Lieutenant Colonel Yuna stood in the underground command center of the Republic of Korea Air Force. She was 42 years old. She had served her country for 20 years. She had trained for many scenarios. Invasion by foreign nations, terrorist attacks, natural disasters. She had never trained for aliens, but as she watched the massive ships hovering in the sky on the satellite feed, she felt something strange. Not fear, not panic. Something else. Something hot and sharp in her chest. Anger. Double quotes. What are our orders? Asked Captain Junho. He was her second in command. A good soldier. Steady and calm. We wait, Yuna said. The UN Security Council is meeting. Every military on Earth is talking to each other right now. Will we fight? Yuna looked at the young captain. She could see the fear in his eyes. But she could see something else too. The same thing she felt. Yes, she said. We will fight. Across the world, the same conversations were happening. In Washington and Moscow and Beijing and London and Tokyo, old enemies were suddenly talking. Old hatreds were suddenly forgotten. Because there was something bigger now. Something that threatened all of them equally. Dr. Hana was a professor at a small university in Daegu. She studied languages. She had spent her career learning how humans communicated with each other. She had never imagined she would need to learn how to communicate with something not human. The phone call came at 3 in the morning. A government official. Very serious. Very urgent. We need you in Seoul, the official said. We have captured some of their communications. We need someone to help us understand their language. Hannah did not ask questions. She packed a small bag and got in the black car that arrived at her apartment. 3 hours later, she was in an underground bunker, staring at symbols on a screen that no human had ever seen before. Can you do it? Asked the general with tired eyes. I do not know, Hannah said honestly. But I will try. In a military base near Daejeon, Private Taeyeon was loading ammunition into magazines. He was 21 years old. He had joined the army because he did not know what else to do with his life. He had never fired his weapon at another living thing. Around him, soldiers from different nations were arriving. Americans, Japanese, Chinese, Russians, countries that had pointed weapons at each other for decades were now standing side by side. An older soldier sat down next to Taeyeon. He was American. His name tag said Williams. First time? Williams asked. Taeyeon nodded. His hands were shaking slightly. Me too, Williams said. I mean, first time fighting aliens. Done plenty of regular fighting. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Never thought I would be sitting here with a Korean kid, getting ready to shoot at spaceships. Are you scared? Taeyeon asked. Williams was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said. But I am also angry. These things come to our planet. They tell us to kneel. They threaten our families. He shook his head. I do not kneel. In the command center, the 12 hours were almost over. The world's leaders had been talking non-stop. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to try negotiating. But then something happened that changed everything. The aliens began destroying a small town in Brazil. Not because the town had attacked them. Not because the people there had refused to surrender. Simply to show that they could. Simply to demonstrate their power. 15,000 people died in seconds. The arguments stopped. The debates ended. Every nation on Earth, for the first time in human history, agreed on something. They would not surrender. The response was sent on every frequency. A single message, translated into the alien language by Dr. Hannah and her team. Come down here and try. On his command ship, High Commander Thelos received the message. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he laughed. Brave, he said to his officers. Stupid, but brave. Prepare the ground forces. We will crush them quickly. He gave the order for 10,000 soldiers to descend to Earth. He expected the invasion to be finished within a week. He expected the humans to break after seeing real Velith power. He did not understand what he was dealing with, Don. He did not know that humans had been killing each other since before they could write. He did not know about their wars, their weapons, their terrible creativity when it came to destruction. He did not know that the same creatures who wrote poetry and built hospitals and loved their children were also capable of unimaginable violence. He was about to learn. Lieutenant Colonel Yuna watched the alien dropships begin their descent. Hundreds of them, falling through the atmosphere like burning stars. All units, she said into her radio. This is it. Remember what they did to Brazil. Remember that they gave us no choice. She took a deep breath. Make them regret coming here. The first shots of the war were fired moments later. The aliens had expected frightened primitives. They found something else entirely. They found humanity. And humanity was very, very angry. The war was now in its third week. Earth was burning. Great cities that had stood for centuries were now nothing but ash and rubble. Seoul, Tokyo, Los Angeles, London, Moscow. The alien bombardment had killed millions, but humanity refused to break. Commander Jiho stood in the central command bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea. He was only 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, he had been a mid-level officer with a promising career ahead of him. Now, with most of the senior commanders dead, he was leading what remained of Earth's combined military forces. The burden was crushing, but he carried it anyway. Status report, he said to the officers gathered around the holographic display table. Major Nari, his intelligence officer, stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had not slept in days, but her voice was steady. The aliens have stopped sending ground forces, she said. After losing over 70% of their landing troops, they have changed tactics. They are now maintaining a complete blockade of the planet. Nothing goes in or out. They are trying to starve us, said another officer, a Russian colonel named Petrov. Yes, Nari agreed. They believe time is on their side. If they cannot defeat us quickly, they will wait until we are too weak to fight. Jiho stared at the display. It showed the planet surrounded by the alien fleet. 280 ships arranged in a perfect sphere around Earth. No gaps. No weaknesses. How long can we last? He asked. Months perhaps, said a supply officer. We have stockpiled food and ammunition. But eventually, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Jiho nodded slowly. They were trapped. The aliens could wait. Humanity could not. Then, we need to break the blockade, he said. We need to take the fight to them. The room went silent. Everyone knew this was impossible. Humanity had no space fleet. They had missiles, yes, but the aliens had learned from their earlier losses. Their shields were stronger now. Their defenses were better prepared. Sir, said Major Nari carefully, we have no way to reach them. Jiho turned to look at her. There was something in his eyes. Something that had not been there before the war. A hardness. A determination that bordered on madness. Then we build one, he said 300 kilometers away. In a hidden facility beneath the mountains. Dr. Suman was working on the impossible. She was a physicist. Before the war, she had spent her career studying theoretical propulsion systems. Ideas that other scientists called dreams. Methods of travel that seemed like magic now. Surrounded by the wreckage of crashed alien ships. She was turning those dreams into reality. The propulsion system is actually simpler than we thought, she explained to the military officials who visited her laboratory. The basic principles are similar to theories we developed decades ago. We just never had the materials to build them. And now we do, said General Park, the senior surviving member of the Korean military. Yes. Suman gestured to the alien engine components spread across her work tables. Their technology is advanced, but not incomprehensible. Give me the resources, and I can build ships that fly. How many? Suman hesitated. 6, maybe 7. Small ones. No weapons. No shields. Just engines. What good are ships without weapons? Suman looked at the general. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But 3 weeks of war had changed her, just as it had changed everyone. They do not need weapons, she said. They just need to carry soldiers to the enemy command ship. The plan was insane. Everyone knew it. Build 6 small ships using stolen alien technology. Launch them toward the enemy fleet. Try to reach the command vessel before being destroyed. Board the ship with ground troops. It was a suicide mission. The chances of success were almost 0. When Commander Jiho asked for volunteers. Every soldier in every bunker on Earth raised their hand. Sergeant Yoonji was one of the first chosen. She was 26 years old. Before the war, she had been stationed at a base near Incheon. She had a mother and a father and a younger brother. She had plans to leave the military soon. Maybe go to university. Maybe find a normal life. Then the bombardment came. Incheon was one of the first cities destroyed. She learned about her family's death from a casualty report. Just names on a list. 3 more numbers in a total that kept growing every day. Something broke inside her that day. And something else grew in its place. When the interviewing officer asked why she wanted to volunteer for a mission with almost no chance of survival, Yoonji smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I am not planning to die, she said. I am planning to make them afraid. The 6 ships were built in 2 weeks. It should have taken years. But humanity had no years. They had days. Maybe hours. Scientists and engineers worked without sleep. Soldiers stood guard around the facility, ready to die to protect the project. Resources flowed in from every nation on Earth. Metals, electronics, fuel, everything that was needed. When the ships were finally complete, Dr. Suman looked at them with exhausted eyes. They were ugly, rough and unfinished, held together with welding and hope. "They're not pretty," she said to Commander Jiho, "but they will fly." "Can they reach the command ship?" "Maybe, if they launch at the right time. If the pilots are skilled enough. If we are lucky." Jiho looked at the ships. 6 small vessels. Each one would carry 100 soldiers. 600 people, flying into the heart of the enemy fleet. Most of them would die. He knew this. They knew this. "Prepare for launch," he ordered. The night before the mission, the soldiers gathered for a final meal. It was simple food. Rice and soup and whatever vegetables could be found. But no one complained. Yoonji sat with her squad. 12 soldiers, men and women from 5 different countries. They had trained together for 2 weeks. They had become a family. "Are you afraid?" asked Park, a young private who had joined the military only months before the invasion. "Yes," Yoonji admitted. "But fear does not matter. Only what we do matters. What if we fail?" Yoonji looked at the young soldier. He was barely 20 years old. He should be in school, worrying about exams and girlfriends. Instead, he was preparing to storm an alien warship. "Then others will try again," she said. "Humanity does not give up. We never have. That is what the aliens do not understand about us. They think if they hurt us enough, we will stop fighting. But we will not stop. We cannot stop. It is not in our nature." At dawn, the 6 ships launched. They rose from the hidden facility like arrows fired at the sky. The alien sensors detected them immediately. The enemy fleet began to react. Defensive positions were adjusted. Weapons were prepared. High Commander Thelos watched the tiny ships approach. He felt confusion. What did the humans hope to accomplish? These vessels were too small to be warships, too slow to be missiles. What were they? "Destroy them," he ordered casually. His ships opened fire. 4 of the human vessels were hit almost immediately. They exploded in silence, scattering debris and bodies into space, but 2 ships survived. They were smaller than the others, faster. Their pilots were the best humanity had. They dodged and weaved through the defensive fire with skill that seemed impossible. And then, impossibly, they reached the command ship. The alarms on the Velith vessel began to scream. Humans were coming. The Velith soldiers were confident when they landed outside Bizon. They had conquered many worlds. They had faced many species. Every single time, the pattern was the same. The primitives would see Velith power. They would feel Velith weapons. And they would break. Commander Vreth led the landing force of 200 soldiers. Each one wore advanced armor that could stop most projectile weapons. Each one carried a plasma rifle that could burn through metal. They were the elite of the Velith military. They marched toward the city in perfect formation. Their sensors showed no enemy forces nearby. The streets ahead looked empty. The humans had obviously fled in fear. Vreth allowed himself a small smile. This would be easy. The first explosion killed 30 of his soldiers instantly. The blast came from below. The humans had buried explosives in the road. Mines, they called them. Simple devices. Primitive technology. But very, very effective. Before Vreth could give orders, gunfire erupted from every direction. From buildings. From rooftops. From underground tunnels. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. Sergeant Major Woojin watched through his scope as the alien formation broke apart. He was 53 years old. He had been a soldier for 31 years. He had fought in jungles and deserts and city streets. He had killed men from many nations. Now, He was killing something not from Earth at all. "Concentrate fire on their joints," he said calmly into his radio. "The armor is weaker there. Aim for knees and elbows." His soldiers obeyed. They had set up this ambush over the past 6 hours. They had studied the alien armor. They had found its weaknesses. They had prepared kill zones and escape routes. The aliens had superior technology. But the humans had something else. Experience. Commander Vreth screamed orders at his soldiers. But the chaos was too much. They had never faced an enemy like this. On other worlds, primitives stood in lines and charged and died. These humans refused to fight properly. They appeared from shadows, fired their weapons, and vanished before the Velith could respond. "Fall back," Vreth shouted. "Fall back to the landing zone." But there was no falling back. The humans had blocked every exit. Wujin had learned this tactic decades ago, from studying battles that happened centuries before he was born. Surround the enemy. Cut off retreat. Then destroy them piece by piece. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, 200 Velis soldiers lay dead in the streets of Bizan. The humans had lost 18. Sergeant Major Wujin looked at the alien bodies and felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just cold determination. "Report to command," he told his radio operator. "Landing force eliminated. Awaiting further orders." Across the world, similar battles were happening. The Velith had expected quick victories. They found nightmares instead. In Norway, a Velith unit landed in the mountains. They were met by soldiers who had trained their entire lives in snow and cold. The aliens froze while the Norwegians moved like ghosts through the white landscape. In Vietnam, another unit landed in the jungle. The Vietnamese had been fighting invaders in these jungles for generations. They knew every tree, every river, every shadow. The Velith soldiers disappeared one by one, pulled into the green darkness and never seen again. In Egypt, in Russia, in Canada, in Japan. Everywhere the aliens landed, humans were waiting. Not in neat formations, not in obvious defensive positions, but hidden, patient, deadly. High Commander Thalos stared at the reports coming to his command ship. He could not understand what he was reading. 60% of his ground forces were gone. Not captured. Not retreating. Gone. How is this possible? He demanded. They have no advanced weapons. They have no shields. How are they killing our soldiers? His tactical officer, a young Velith named Kreen, pulled up historical data on his screen. He had been studying human records. What he found made his blood run cold. "Commander," Kreen said slowly, "I have been analyzing their history. These humans, they have been at war with each other constantly. For thousands of years. They have developed thousands of ways to kill. All primitives fight among themselves," Thalos said dismissively. "No, Commander. You do not understand." Kreen brought up images, metals, weapons, tactics. They do not fight like primitives. They have studied warfare like a science. They have generals who wrote books on strategy that their soldiers still study centuries later. They have weapons designed specifically to kill efficiently. Delos looked at the images. Trenches filled with bodies. Cities reduced to rubble. Weapons that could kill millions in seconds. They did this to each other? He asked quietly. "Yes, Commander. They nearly destroyed themselves several times." "And now?" Kreen paused. "Now they are not fighting each other. They are fighting us." In the underground bunker in Seoul, Dr. Minji was working on the captured alien communication device. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red, and her hands were shaking from too much coffee. But she was making progress. "I have something," she called out. Several officers gathered around her station. On the screen, Alien text scrolled past. Minji had cracked enough of their language to understand the basic meaning. "This is a message from one of their ground commanders," she said. He's asking for help. He says." She read the words carefully. "He says, they're not fighting like prey. They are hunting us." The officers looked at each other. One of them, a general from China, smiled grimly. "Good," he said. "Let them understand what they have awakened." High Commander Thalos made a decision. Ground forces were failing. He would use a different approach. He would burn the humans from orbit. He would destroy their cities until they had no choice but to surrender. He ordered the bombardment of Seoul, but the humans had anticipated this. They had been watching the alien ships. They had been calculating trajectories. And they had been preparing their nuclear weapons not to use against each other. Not this time. When the alien bombardment began, the missiles launched. Hundreds of them. From submarines in the Pacific. From silos in America and Russia and China. From mobile launchers hidden in mountains and forests. The Velith had defensive systems. Energy shields. Interceptor drones. Point defense cannons. They destroyed most of the missiles, but not all of them. 18 nuclear warheads found their targets. 18 Velith warships, including 3 of their largest battlecruisers, fell burning from the sky. They crashed into oceans and mountains and empty deserts, leaving craters that would last for centuries. On Earth, people watched the alien ships fall. They saw the explosions in the sky. And for the first time since the invasion began, they felt something other than fear. They felt hope. High Commander Thalos stood on his bridge and watched 18 of his ships die. His hands were shaking. His mind was struggling to accept what was happening. These primitives. These animals. They had actually hurt his fleet. "Commander," his communications officer said nervously, "we are receiving transmissions from the other ships. They want to know what to do." Thalos was silent for a long moment. He had 282 ships remaining. Still more than enough to destroy this planet. But his soldiers were dying on the ground. His ships were being knocked from the sky, and the humans would not stop fighting. "We continue the bombardment," he said finally. "Destroy their cities. All of them. Leave nothing standing." It was a mistake. The worst mistake of his long career. Because the destruction only made humanity angrier. Only made them more determined. And Thalos still did not understand the most important truth about humans. They did not know how to surrender. They had never learned. And they were not going to learn now. High Commander Thalos stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched the impossible happen. 2 human vessels, tiny and primitive, had somehow made it through his defensive fire. They were now approaching his ship's hull. "Destroy them," he screamed at his weapons officers. "What are you waiting for?" "Sir, they are too close," the officer responded. "If we fire now, we will damage our own hull." Thalos felt something cold grip his heart. In 2,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever gotten this close to a Velith command vessel. No enemy had ever been insane enough to try. The human ships did not try to attack from outside. They did something worse. They crashed directly into the hull. The impact shook the massive vessel. Alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed red. Damage reports flooded the communication channels. But the real horror was just beginning. Sergeant Yunji was the first through the breach. The impact had killed 17 of her soldiers. The crude airlock they had built barely held. Several of her people were bleeding from wounds caused by the violent entry. None of that mattered. "Move!" she shouted. "Everyone move. We do not stop until we reach the bridge." The surviving soldiers poured into the alien ship. There were 83 of them. From 2 ships, only 83 had survived the journey. They were bruised and bleeding and terrified. They were also very, very angry. The first Velith they encountered was a maintenance worker. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, with gray skin and 4 arms. He stared at the humans with confusion. No one had ever invaded a Velith ship. He did not know what to do. Eung shot him without hesitation. He fell, and the humans moved on. The corridors of the Velith ship were wide and tall, built for creatures much larger than humans. The lighting was dim. The air smelled strange, like chemicals and something organic. Every surface was covered with alien symbols and technology. "Which way to the bridge?" asked one of her soldiers, a German named Weber. Eunji pointed at the fallen alien. He was going somewhere. Follow the direction he came from. Command centers are usually in the middle of ships, hardest to reach from outside. They move through the corridors like water through a pipe. Fast, relentless. The humans did not walk in neat formations. They spread out, covering all angles. They moved from cover to cover. They checked every shadow. This was urban combat. This was close quarters battle. Humanity had been perfecting these skills for thousands of years. The first real resistance came at a junction. A squad of Velith soldiers, 10 of them, had set up a defensive position. They had plasma weapons and heavy armor. The humans did not try to charge them. That was what the aliens expected. Instead, Eunji sent 2 soldiers through an air duct. While the Velith focused on the humans in front of them, the 2 soldiers dropped behind their position. The battle lasted 12 seconds. When it was over, 10 Velith soldiers were dead. The humans had lost 2. "Keep moving," Eunji ordered. Her voice was calm. Her heart was anything but. On the bridge, High Commander Thelos was receiving reports from throughout his ship. None of them were good. "They are in Sector 7, his tactical officer reported. "They have eliminated all resistance there." "How many are there?" Thelos demanded. "We are not certain, Commander. Our sensors are having difficulty tracking them. They move too fast. They do not stay in one place." Thelos could not understand what was happening. His ship had a crew of 15,000. It had security forces. It had weapons lockers and defensive positions and emergency protocols. None of it was working. "Seal the bridge," he ordered. "Bring all available security forces to this location. We will hold here until reinforcements arrive from the fleet." "Yes, Commander." But the reinforcements would not arrive in time. Thelos did not know it yet, but the humans had already blocked the external airlocks. No one was getting in. And very soon, no one would be getting out. Eunji's group had taken heavy losses. Of the 83 soldiers who had survived the landing, only 31 remained. They were wounded, exhausted, and running low on ammunition. They were also less than 50 meters from the bridge. "How many guards?" Eunji asked, pressing against the wall. Park, who had somehow survived despite being the youngest and least experienced, peered around the corner with a small mirror. 20. Maybe more. They have barricaded the entrance. Heavy weapons? Several. Looks like plasma turrets. Eunji closed her eyes for a moment. 20 guards. Heavy weapons. And she had 31 soldiers with conventional firearms and less than 50 rounds each. The math did not work. A direct assault would kill most of her people. She thought about the journey to get here. The friends she had lost. The families that would never be whole again. The cities that had burned. The millions who had died. She thought about her parents. Her brother. The morning they had waved goodbye, not knowing it would be the last time. She opened her eyes. "We go through," she said. Her soldiers did not hesitate. They did not ask for an explanation. They had known this moment was coming since they volunteered. They had made peace with death long ago. The assault was brutal. The humans charged the barricade, firing as they moved. The Velith plasma turrets cut through them. Soldiers fell screaming. Bodies littered the corridor, but the humans did not stop. They could not stop. Every fallen soldier was replaced by another, climbing over the bodies of their friends to reach the enemy. Park was hit in the shoulder. He kept fighting. Weber took a plasma bolt to the leg. He crawled forward, still firing. A Chinese soldier named Lin jumped on a plasma turret and jammed her rifle into the operator's face, killing him before the gun was turned on her. When the doors to the bridge finally opened, only 7 humans were still standing. Yoonji was one of them. She walked onto the bridge of the Velith command ship. Her armor was cracked and burned. Blood ran from a wound on her head. Her rifle was nearly empty, but she was smiling. High Commander Thello stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by his officers. They were tall and powerful and had weapons of their own. They were also terrified. Thello stared at the small human woman. She was so tiny, so fragile. How could something so weak have caused so much destruction? "You came to our world," Yoonji said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You threatened our families, our children. You thought we would surrender." Thelnos raised his weapon. His hands were shaking. "We are humans," Yoonji continued, "and we do not forgive." She fired. The High Commander fell. His officers tried to fight back. They lasted less than a minute. When it was over, Yoonji stood alone in the center of the bridge. Her soldiers were either dead or too wounded to stand. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Her vision was going dark, but she managed to reach the communication console. She had learned enough about Velith technology during the journey to understand the basics. She activated the broadcast system. "This is Sergeant Yoonji of Earth," she said. Her voice was carried to every ship in the Velith fleet. "Your commander is dead. Your command ship is ours. Leave our system now, or we will come for every single one of you." Then she collapsed. She did not see what happened next. She did not see the Velith fleet hesitate. She did not see them begin to retreat, ship by ship, away from the planet they had thought would be easy prey. She did not know that she had just changed the course of history, but the galaxy would remember. The galaxy would remember the day a handful of humans, armed with primitive weapons and infinite rage, stormed the Velith command ship and brought an empire to its knees. They would remember Yoonji. They would remember all of them. The war ended not with a treaty, but with a retreat. When the Velith fleet fled Earth's system, they left behind the wreckage of 132 ships. They left behind the bodies of over 50,000 soldiers. They left behind their pride, their confidence, and their belief that they were invincible. They also left behind a universe that would never be the same. On Earth, the survivors emerged from bunkers and basements and rubble. They looked up at a sky that was finally empty of alien ships. They looked at the ruins of their cities. They counted the dead. The numbers were terrible. 23 million people had died in the bombardment. Another 8 million had been killed in the ground fighting. Great cities that had stood for centuries were nothing but ash. Landmarks that had survived world wars were gone, but humanity had survived, and they had one commander. Jiho stood before the United Nations General Assembly 2 months after the last alien ship disappeared from Earth's sensors. The building itself was temporary. The original UN headquarters in New York had been destroyed. This new structure was built from the wreckage of Velith ships. "We were not ready," Jiho said to the assembled representatives. His voice was carried to every screen on the planet. "We were divided. We were outmatched. We had no space fleet, no planetary defenses, no experience fighting enemies from other worlds." He paused. The room was silent, and we won anyway. The applause started slowly. It built like a wave. Soon the entire hall was standing, crying, shouting their relief and their grief and their fierce, stubborn pride. We won not because we were stronger, Jiho continued when the noise finally died down. Not because we were smarter. We won because we refused to accept defeat. We won because when they knocked us down, we got back up. Every single time. Until they had nothing left to hit us with. He looked at the representatives. Men and women from nations that had been enemies for generations. People who had forgotten their differences when something bigger threatened them all. Let us never forget this, he said. Let us never forget what we can accomplish when we stand together. In the ruins of Bizan, Sergeant Major Wujin laid flowers at a makeshift memorial. It was covered with names. Soldiers who had fallen in the first battle. Civilians who had died in the bombardment. Children who would never grow up. He was old now. Older than he had any right to be. The war had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with years. His hair had turned gray. His hands sometimes shook. He saw the faces of the dead when he closed his eyes, but he was still alive. That was something. Around him, young soldiers were working to clear the rubble. They were building something new on top of the destruction. That was what humans did. They destroyed, and then they built again. Sir? Wujin turned. A young private was standing behind him. She could not have been more than 19 years old. Yes? I just wanted to thank you. For what you did, for holding the line at Bizan. Wujin looked at the girl. She reminded him of someone. Maybe his daughter. Maybe himself many years ago. I did not do anything special, he said. I just did my job. You saved the city. No, Wujin shook his head. We all saved the city. Every soldier who fought. Every civilian who helped. Every person who refused to give up. He gestured at the memorial. They saved the city. I just happened to survive. The girl nodded slowly. Then she saluted and returned to her work. Wujin watched her go. The young ones would be okay. They were strong. They had survived something that should have destroyed them. They would build a new world. He hoped it would be better than the old one. Sergeant Yunji woke up in a hospital 3 weeks after the battle on the command ship. She had been in a coma. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived. She did not feel like a miracle. She felt empty. When the visitors came, telling her she was a hero, that she had saved humanity, that her name would be remembered forever. She just stared at the ceiling. She thought about the soldiers who had died following her through those alien corridors. She thought about Park and Weber and Lin and all the others whose bodies were still floating in the wreckage of the command ship. I did not save anyone, she told them. They saved me, but the world needed heroes. And whether she wanted it or not, Yunji became one of them. Statues were built in her image. Schools were named after her. Children learned her name alongside the great warriors of human history. She hated all of it. What she did not hate was the work that came after. The rebuilding, the healing, the slow, painful process of putting the world back together. She left the military. She became a teacher. She told her students about the war, not the heroic parts, the real parts, the fear, the loss, the terrible choices that had to be made. Remember this, she told them. We are capable of great destruction, but we are also capable of great courage, great sacrifice, great love. The aliens came to our world and saw monsters. And maybe that is what we are. But we are also so much more. Dr. Hannah stood in her new laboratory and listened to the signals from the stars. She had spent the years since the war building humanity's first true interstellar communication network. Messages were coming in from everywhere. Other species, other civilizations, all of them asking the same questions. What happened to the Velith Dominion? Who defeated them? What are humans? They are afraid of us, said Dr. Suman, who had joined Hannah's team after the war. every species we contact. They have heard the stories. They do not know what to think. Hannah smiled. Then we will show them, not through words, through actions. In the years that followed, humanity reached for the stars, not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as survivors, as builders, as friends. They found species that had been enslaved by the Velith. They helped free them. They found worlds that had been destroyed. They helped rebuild them. They shared their technology, their knowledge, their strange and wonderful culture. But they never forgot what they were capable. The galaxy watched the young species from the third planet with a mixture of wonder and fear. Humans were kind, they discovered, generous, even gentle. They laughed easily and loved deeply and created beautiful things. But the older species, the ones who remembered the Velith, always gave the same warning. Never threaten them, they said. Never attack their home. Never hurt their children. Because the humans have a saying. It is old, older than their written history, and it tells you everything you need to know about them. The saying was simple. 4 words. But in those words was all the terrifying truth of humanity. We do not kneel. And in the cold, dark places between stars, the remnants of the Velith dominion hid. Their great empire was gone. Their pride was ash. They had once been the most feared species in the galaxy. Now they were survivors. Just like the humans, but unlike the humans, they did not rebuild. They did not reach out to other species. They did not grow stronger. They huddled in the darkness. They jumped at shadows. They told stories to their children about the monsters from the blue planet. Never go to Earth, they warned. Never provoke the humans. They are small and soft and short-lived. But they are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. And in the warmth of Earth's sun, humanity thrived. They built new cities. They healed old wounds. They raised children who knew nothing of the war except what they read in books. But they kept the ships. They kept the weapons. They kept the training and the knowledge and the will to fight because they knew the truth. The galaxy was vast and dark and full of dangers. And somewhere out there, another threat was waiting. Another challenge. Another test. When it came, humanity would be ready. They had cried out to the skies, demanding surrender. And the monsters of Earth had answered. They would always answer. And the galaxy would never forget.